talk today. Our speaker is Ms. Nazia Ijaz. She is the Corporate Alliance Specialist at UNICEF Thailand. She is here today to talk about the linkage between children's rights and businesses. Please welcome Nazia.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Hope you've enjoyed your lunch. And for the next few minutes, I will speak about child rights in business and hope it be food for thought. And before I start, because when we try to approach companies and talk about child rights, the response that we get from a lot of companies, if they're not producing goods that children use or consume, or they're like, we don't really have much to do with children. And just want to get an idea from you here in the room. What are your perspectives? Before we start, do you think that businesses have an impact on children?
Yes.
Yes? Yes? Okay, so we have a very sensitive audience here. And I have divided this presentation into 3 parts. So first we will basically the what, why, and how. The what part would be focusing on the linkages between child rights and business. The why would be why human rights of children matter. And how would be how can companies minimize risks and maximize opportunities by implementing the children's rights and business principles. So when we talk about children, for the purpose of this presentation and also UNICEF's work, we really focus on the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And according to the convention, the definition is every human being below the age of 18 years, unless the law applicable, under the law applicable to the child majority is attained earlier. And when we talk about children, we are looking at the life cycle from birth until they transition into adulthood. And this is a very critical period because there's a lot going on. There's the emotional development going on, there's the physical development, the psychological, and any impact, especially negative impact, can have an irreversible effect on children. And when we talk about child rights, if we look at the bigger groups here, the right to survival, development, protection, participation, and business can impact these rights. For example, if we look at survival, the food, right? What's the best food for a newborn? Mother's milk. Right? And for example, even just by having these breastfeeding rooms or corners in the offices, this is something that business can help promote. Play, if I take play in development. Here we can also look at, for example, the property development companies. In your design of buildings or areas, do you have areas where children can play? Do you think about these things? So, and if you do, that's how you promote the right to play. Participation. This, we did see the big One Young World Forum, which was held in Bangkok recently. And we also saw that there were many sponsors from the corporate sector. So whether you're sponsoring youth forums or even your product and services, if you have products and services that are creating platforms that can enable you to share their opinions, voice what they think, that's one way the companies can also support. In terms of protection, here we are seeing that, especially there have been examples from the travel and tourism sector, where there are initiatives such as a code, where companies sign on to and then undergo trainings, their staff undergo trainings on commercial sexual exploitation. How can they watch out for these things in the business. Whether, for example, if you're a staff at the reception, how do you see, is there a way if a grown-up brings in, checks in with a child, how do you alert the manager if you sense that there's something wrong here? And there have been other examples as well, and especially in terms of the exploitation. There is this issue that we hear a lot in the news on the child labor exploitation, and especially in the seafood industry. We hear that in the media a lot. And companies can do a lot so that to reduce the impact on children on that by having these policies, the zero tolerance policies on child labor, by promoting and supporting other initiatives such as education initiatives. Why human rights of children should matter to business? Because there's direct and indirect interaction between business and children. Children are consumers, they're family members of the employees, and young workers in the workplace, and community members where the business operates. And children are also the future skilled workers and productive citizens of the country. And business impacts, like I mentioned earlier, can be both positive and negative. And it could be in their workplace, in the marketplace, in the community or environment. Therefore, we consider business as a key stakeholder in promoting the well-being and contributing to children's rights. But however, we also see that children are still invisible and unheard stakeholders in business. The other thing also we're seeing is that there's growing international pressure for the country to look at child rights issues. There is the recent Trafficking in Persons report that highlights the issue of child labor, the commercial exploitation of children. NGO reports we see from time to time, the NGO reports, and also the international buyers respond. Recently, what I was reading on the internet was also that buyers are boycotting products, certain products from the country, because of the NGO reports. You have cases of child labor that have been identified in those reports. And we also have this Committee of the Rights of the Child. This is a committee that provides recommendations and observations to countries. And the recent observation to Thailand has this section on child rights and business. And it highlights certain industries that Thailand should look at. The heavy industries, manufacturing, textiles, but it pays specific attention to the tourism sector and highlights the issue of child sex trafficking, the issue of child pornography, child prostitution, things like that. And this is something that the country has to report on in the next 2 years. What we're also seeing is that a lot of companies in the country, if you look at the CSR, they would have some initiatives, some project relating to children. So it's not that companies are not working or contributing to child rights, they are doing. And it's one of the top list of issues that the company would put the CSR efforts in. But and the current focus, which we have found through internal mapping, is that the focus is on child labor because of the international pressure and things like that, especially in the seafood industry. Education and scholarships, a big trend, big contribution. Health, sport, art, music, projects, outings, excursions, donations to children. So businesses are giving and contributing, but we feel that they can do more. And why do we feel that? Because power and the role of the private sector in the country. Thailand is an upper middle income country, as we all know. And there's a strong and influential private sector. There's strong private sector and government banks. It's export-oriented economy, you have multinationals here, it attracts migrants. So we do feel that private sector can do more. And how can business promote human rights of children? What more can they do? There is this guiding principles of business and human rights, which has 3 pillars. The state's duty to protect human rights, the corporate responsibility to respect human rights. So that's where we will focus on. And when we talk about respect, UNICEF, Global Compact, and Save the Children developed these principles, set of guidance principles back in 2012, which provides practical guidance and advice to companies on the issue of child rights in business. And these are voluntary. There's no sign-on mechanism at the moment. Monitoring and no monitoring and reporting at the moment. It's more of guidance than it gives to business. And the central ideas of these principles are the ideas of respect. Companies should respect child rights as minimum, and then support child rights. In addition to respecting, we could do more. So that's the responsibility to respect and support, where we have avoiding infringement of human rights, including rights of children, and that's where we look at business risks. That by avoiding negative impacts or minimizing negative impacts, the companies can minimize the risks. And commitment to support is the voluntary actions that we can seek to advance human rights, and that's where the business opportunities come in. Example here on the child labor. This is the guidance from the principles is on the responsibility to respect. Yes, don't employ children, verify the minimum working age, prevent children from hazardous work. But commitment to support here is raise awareness of child labor and education alternatives. So the children can use schools and learning supply chains, and also doing other initiatives with governments, civil societies, and unions. And those 10 principles that I mentioned very briefly are clubbed into 3 areas. That is the workplace, the marketplace, community, and environment. And and in the next few slides, I'll just share a few examples on each. But what is central is this whole idea of child rights integration in your policies. That when you are looking at your company's internal policies, are you thinking of these issues? Or is it something external? Is it something still very external CSR that you do, which is one-off, which is not related to policy or not reflected in your policies? That's the central here. So the foundation is, of all the 10, because when you tell companies, they're like, oh my God, 10 things, you are guiding us on 10 things. And we're like, the key is this, that if you have responsibility to respect, and then you look at the respect and support element, then you see what is material for a company. If they should child labor, whether it's marketing, advertising, it depends on the nature of the company, the industry. So they have to prioritize that. But in terms of guidance, it's broad. And here I would like to share this example of this child-friendly business project that we just launched with the Thai Path Institute here in Thailand. And as part of this project, companies will undergo trainings on the children's rights and business principles, the ones that I'm explaining now. And we'll also look at implementation of certain tools, because UNICEF has also developed a few tools for companies to guide them through the process. So this will, and at the moment, this was just launched this Monday at the Stock Exchange in Thailand. And at the moment, we have 31 companies. Most of them are listed companies, and from different sectors. We have construction companies, we have companies from the hospitality sector, from the petroleum sector, from ICT, and also from a television company as well. And when we look at the workplace issues that I just mentioned, the issue of child labor, and the third one is young workers, is basically how do you, because you can employ children that are under 18, but above 15. But there are certain conditions of work. So decent work for young workers, parents and caregivers. This is where the family-friendly workplace policies come in for companies. Child protection is protection and safety of children. This is in companies' facilities. And I'll share an example later. And also in, for example, your company travel policies, your company's policies on use of computers at work and internet and things like that. look at the issue of child pornography, or even the travel policies? Do you mention, or are your employees aware that if they're traveling on company's expenses, what type of places they shouldn't visit, or what type of services they shouldn't be going after related to children? And here we have an example. So like if you just look at the respect and support element, the respect element is mainly about the internal company policies. So for example, here we have this child labor policy of a company, for clothing and accessories company. So they don't only just mention the minimum age of employment, but they also go down into that, what if a child labor case is identified? How will the supplier deal with that? So it's not just a preventive action plan, but also a corrective action plan. Because for some companies, they say, yes, we have a zero tolerance policy on child labor. So if a supplier, we find out that a supplier uses child labor, we terminate the contract right away, right? But then the termination of contract doesn't solve the problem, because then the child moves from maybe that company to another company. So then there's also these preventive action plans are also encouraged, that you correct, but if you find out, how do you respond to that? And on the other end, we also have few companies in Chiang Mai that UNICEF is engaging with, that are promoting the education of migrant children. Because if you see in the country, migrant children are at high risk of exploitation, especially as child laborers. There's a cabinet resolution that all children in Thailand can go to school, including the migrant children. But the implementation is still a challenge from both ends. I mean, there are, even the migrants themselves, the parents themselves don't know they can send children to high schools. And on the other hand, there are still some schools as well that are hesitant to receive migrant children. But for example, in Chiang Mai, because we have a huge migrant population there, and we do see that the business there is really aware of this issue. And we have cases in Chiang Mai where we see that companies are supporting the education of their children of their migrant employees. For example, through scholarships, okay, but then also linking up with schools around the factories. So that they talk to the schools around the factories, and then they also let their migrant employees know that, okay, your children, you brought your own children, yes, we have spoken to these schools around the company, you can send your children to these schools. So things like that. Or even simple initiatives, like there's a company in Chiang Mai which is also just providing pick and drop service for the children of the employees, because the school is a bit remote, and the school, they are happy, they said, yes, we accept migrant children, you can send the children of the employees to our school, but we don't have pick and drop service. So even those little initiatives. Because at the end of the day, if these children are not in schools, then there's a high risk of them ending up in supply chains. Young workers, like I mentioned earlier, a young worker is a child above the legal minimum working age who's involved in economic activity and under 18 years old. And Thailand's Labour Protection Act specifies the conditions of hiring a young worker. But this is again something we're finding out that this information is there, but not a lot of people are aware of this. As we're speaking to companies, they're like, oh, you didn't know that. But some companies do know about it, but still there's this implementation. So you have these policies, but still the implementation needs a bit more work. And here we have this case of the HB, Student Workers Policy. Is this something that the companies can do when they employ young workers that have this type of policies in place? Whether it's the work should be voluntary, or the working hours, the levels of work, and the areas of work, and things like that. In the family-friendly workplace policies, we're also seeing really good examples in the country of companies that are not just having the breastfeeding rooms, like I mentioned at the beginning, but literally promoting breastfeeding. Because you can have a room, but if it's the trend of people not to, people are not encouraged or really prefer to cannot breastfeed, you really need that motivation. You might have a room that none of the employees would use it. So it's really interesting to see how companies are using different tactics to motivate the female employees. For example, there was also a case of a company where once their female employee delivers a baby, the company, one of their staff, it's her responsibility to make a visit within the first week to the employee's house and talk to her about breastfeeding. So they literally promote, because they said that's a critical period, the first few days. You know, if you cannot do it, you just don't carry it on. So we do see that, and also not just going to the homes, but also having these different initiatives in the companies as well. Like, you know, I was even surprised to see that one of the companies there also have a data on the quantity of the milk that's expressed. That they really are doing that, and then they're kind of motivating the other female employees as well. On the maternity leave as well, to go beyond the minimum legal requirement, this is something very recent, that DTAC announced the 6-month paid maternity leave in Thailand. And Principle 4 looks at child protection and safety that I mentioned earlier. And I briefly mentioned about the code here. There's also the Child Safe Network, where companies or their employees go through the trainings. And both of these are run by NGOs. And the one that I mentioned about child safety in the workplace, we are seeing, for example, construction companies now, and also other companies having these safe spaces for children at the construction site, so that children don't run around and bump into dangerous places. And once you have the children in the safe space, then they're also doing beyond just safety, because once you're there, there's an element of informal education that's coming in. There's that element of giving them awareness on health-related issues and things like that. And now we've also seen vaccinations, that Sensory is also taking the children of their migrant workers at the sites for vaccinations. Marketplace, the product and services. For example, your product, a company's products and services can be misused, right? Can be misused and could harm children. For example, the example here is the ICT industry. We have the issue of child online protection that's being discussed a lot, that how children are being misled over the internet or cyberbullying and things like that. And a lot of companies are aware of this and are taking actions on this. For example, we have, again, DTAC here. They have this guidebook that's coming out on digital parenting, and they also look at the safe internet in the country. That's one of their projects, CSR project, the Safe Internet, where they go to schools and conduct trainings on how to use internet safely for school children. And the other is also not just the misuse of product, but how can companies use their products and services to support children's issues. For example, here again, the ICT company using its SMS, which is its service, to send out SMS to families on parenting, for example. And parents could sign on to this. Advertising and marketing as well. Both the respect and support element again is, for example, we have the H&M policy here on advertising towards children. And the support example here is the ID Please campaign, which one of the companies, basically the Sensory company, used its own marketing and advertising resources to run this campaign on ID Please. And this was very successful because this resulted in legislation on ID, on incorporating ID in salt and in the fish salt. We have other areas here, such as the issue of the environment, land, natural use. This is where companies, we see companies having a lot of putting in efforts on environmental impact assessments. But then do these impact assessments also just look at community and stop there, or they could go a bit further and look at children as well? Because we know that children are impacted differently from adults, especially the toxic chemicals. They impact children more. The pregnant women, the children are impacted more. And as I mentioned earlier, because of the rapid development that's happening in the body of a child, some of this negative impact is irreversible. Security services and personnel, the guidance that these principles provide here is basically in terms of when a company is having the security arrangements, or you have the security guards that are at your companies. Do you do any type of screening prior to see that, have they committed any crimes relating to children? Are you putting these guards in schools and things like that? And also, how do these security guards deal with children if there is a case of theft at the factory and it's a child that has committed that theft? So how do you deal? You need to deal differently than adults. And again, in natural disasters, emergencies here as well, the guidance it gives to companies is that, because when you have these type of incidents, a lot of companies come out and give support in emergencies and support NGOs and things like that. And if you are you also reaching out to NGOs relating to children? Are you talking to parents if you're giving things for children, things like that? In terms of the last one here, the government taxation, corruption-free, we know that a lot of exploitation of children thrives on corruption, right? Whether it's child labor, whether it's commercial sexual exploitation and other things. So how does the company address these issues? Do they have strong anti-corruption policies in their work, in their office? And on the government and community relations, here the guidance that it gives to companies is that we see a lot of companies, as part of the CSR, they do give community investment programs, projects, but the guidance here is that, are you giving what the community needs? Are you talking to the right people here? And is it going to the right, through the right people? And here we have an example here of the Mobile Library Initiative. This is because we know that in Thailand, especially these areas, the remote areas, the children don't have books. And this is very collaborated with the Ministry of Education, with Top's supermarket. And we have these mobile libraries. There are 3 mobile libraries in Mehason, which go around, and then children can borrow books, take them home, a few days, and then they can give it back again when the mobile library visits the village. And when the tools were released in 2012, and we have these principles which were put together in 2014. So this gives guidance to companies on what they can do. For example, on policy commitment, how do you integrate children issues in policy commitment, in code of conduct, in assessing your impacts, in your impact assessment? How do you look at children's issues? And there are criteria for companies that they can refer to. In your reporting, the sustainability reporting, how do you report on children's rights issues? Working on that. And this is a recent tool that came out, was a stakeholder engagement tool. For example, if a company needs to reach out to children or needs to design an initiative relating to children, do they always have to talk to children directly? Not necessarily. They can talk to different stakeholders, but then it depends on who you're talking to and also the issue you're handling. You could be talking to NGOs working on children, you could talk to parents, you could talk to different stakeholders or ministries that are working on children's issues. So the stakeholder engagement gives that guidance to companies. And the other thing that we're also doing is the industry-specific guidance that's coming out. We have this guidance paper on child-friendly financial services for the banks, ICT industry, the online child protection, the mining sector, oil and gas, and other sectors are in the making. And we have this quote here, which we have Representative Charlie from Novo Nordisk said that that sustainability, we talk about sustainability issues, it's about making a better place for the next generation. And therefore, these principles are very heart of sustainability. And I would add also that companies impact children now, not just the future. So you really need to, if you're looking at sustainability, you're looking at your impacts, you also need to look at impacts of children. That's it. And I have a short video after this, and then Q&A.
In 2012, UNICEF, Save the Children and the Global Compact led a process to develop the children's rights and business principles. But what are children's rights? The Universal Declaration on Human Rights declared that children needed special care and protection. As a result, in 1989, the United Nations adopted a resolution giving rights to children everywhere, the Convention on the Rights of the Child. It is the most ratified treaty in the world.
The Convention calls on all of us to help the children of the world. We all have to turn the promises of the Convention into a reality on every part of the globe.
The Convention spells out the basic human rights of all children in 54 articles and 2 optional protocols. With the Convention, the world made a set of universal promises to all children. The Convention has changed the lives of millions of children and clearly sets out that all children everywhere have rights. But we still live in a world where too many children don't enjoy rights or have them fulfilled. If children have the right to education, why are 57 million children not attending primary school? If children have the right to health, why are 3.3 million children under 15 living with HIV? If children have the right not to be exploited, why are 168 million children engaged in child labour? So why are these promises not fulfilled? In ratifying the Convention on the Rights of the Child, a state accepts to respect, protect, promote and fulfil the rights. But not all the promises outlined in the Convention translate into meaningful action for children. Human rights and children's rights are about the choices we make every day as a human being. They are the responsibilities we all share to respect each other, to help each other, and to protect those in need. Translating child rights principles into practice requires action and leadership by governments, but also by families, communities, individuals, and business. Every day, business interacts with children, although often neither directly nor purposefully. Children are workers in factories and fields, family members of employees and community members in the neighbourhoods where businesses operate. Business has an impact on children's rights beyond child labour. Business has responsibility to respect children's rights. Building on the guiding principles on business and human rights, UNICEF, Save the Children and the Global Compact led a process to develop the children's rights and business principles. The 10 principles set out actions for business to respect and support children's rights in the workplace, marketplace and community. Companies should know and show that they do not infringe on children's rights. So how can business respect and support children's rights? Promote employment of young workers. Influence business partners to respect and support children's rights. Ensure responsible marketing practices. Make sure that products and services are safe for children. Help to build the strength of communities where children live and grow.
The children's rights and business principles need business to take a leading role of promoting them.
I think that there is actually an opportunity for businesses to start thinking about child rights.
One of the challenges in addressing human rights anywhere, and children's rights in particular, is you can't see it all the time.
When we're talking about children, they are the children of our employees or the employees of our suppliers. They are consumers. They're also our future.
Thinking about how child right fits into their employment practices, their products and services, and then lastly also what they're doing in the community as a corporate social citizen.
I think business has an important role in the sense that it has a strong lobby with government and the consumers. And if we can use that constructively, then I think we can start to get going.
I think partnering up, companies, NGOs, UN or agencies and governments, that's when you really have the possibility of having a positive impact.
Companies and institutions that advance the respect for children and advance respect for human beings win.
Take action for children now. Change starts with you. Children are everyone's business.
Okay, we'll start the Q&A question. I'll take the first question. Some people in Asia say that child's right or child labor regulation doesn't fit in Asia because the culture and the context sometimes it's a family business. Kids go onto the fishing boat with their parents who learn how to do the business. How do you make the regulation accommodate this culture? And at the same time, if you do loosen up the regulation, how do you keep corporates and other people from exploiting this regulation by having child slavery or the bad stuff?
I mean, if you look at children's rights, right? We refer to the Convention of the Rights of the Child, and a lot of countries might say that this is the way it's done here. It's a culture, or sometimes it could also be religious practices. Oh, it's a religious practice, right? That's how we do it. But then we go back that there are certain standards, and these are international standards that countries have signed on to. So, for example, if Thailand has signed on to the Convention of the Rights of the Child, and these are the minimum rights that the country has committed that it will protect, then it needs to work with companies and raise awareness among the employers that yes, you might say this is the tradition, you bring your own kids, but it's your kid's right to go to school. You can bring the kid, but maybe you have to have some sort of arrangement. You can bring the kid on a weekend or for a few hours or whatever. But then there's this whole element of raising awareness with the parents that because that's what we are seeing that a lot of people are not aware that children have these rights. And once you start raising awareness that then you can bring about some change in it. And there was a very good example that one of the speakers from Midpoint Sugar Group shared at the forum on Monday. It was the same thing that they were having that in Thailand and in the farms. That's the thinking that we bring kids along. It's a tradition, it's a culture. But then they see that, oh, then why aren't we getting out of the US, the TIP report? Why are we again in that? And then they go back and they, okay, that's what they're looking at, the rights angle. Children have rights, they need to be in schools, not just be with the parents, and the parents need to also respect that.
Can you take the next question? No one? Okay, then we can
I think it's always the argument, yes, always you have the declarations, you have the regulations in here. Enforcement or, commitment to the responsibility by the company is crucial. And how does the UNICEF kind of address this kind of issues in here? You look at all these fishermen's culture aspect in here. And for my farmers, for example, I'm not gonna educate them, right? But at the end of the day, it's a cultural thing. They bring the children to the farm to work with them. So how do you address this kind of aspect?
What we're seeing is that what companies are doing is that either they are having these spaces in the farms for children, the informal schooling, they have set that up. For example, we have seen these examples in the orange farms in the farm district in the north, that they have these informal settings of education so that the children have these spaces in the farms where they can get some education. Or we're also seeing companies that are linking up with schools around the farms and making this extra effort that, okay, if you have a quota for accepting children, but we have these workers who bring along children, can you accommodate them? And the companies are supporting the schools in terms of whether the schools need in terms of funding or extra supplies or things like that. So we are seeing that this is how the companies are managing that.
Right. But you talk about, you talk about the solution is not say that you have a contract farmers per se. It's not just to terminate a contract.
Yes.
Assisting them in that aspect. Can you explain a bit more about how company can work with the contract farmers in terms of building this kind of commitments into the practice per se?
What we're seeing is that companies are formalizing it. So they are having the MOUs. They're having their external audits as well. So they're also sending the external auditors to these farms to do this auditing to make sure that this is not happening. And you also need buy-in and commitment from not just one, but you need to team up. And so that's what we're seeing happening. Some companies that are supporting this, that they are pulling in their suppliers, their own factory managers, or even HR managers, and sensitizing them, having these formal commitments, and having audits. So that's what we're seeing, the examples.
In addition to the private sector companies, are you working through any private organizations, like service organizations like Rotary International, community organizations like that as well?
At the moment, no. But we are also engaging with the Ministry of Tourism in Thailand and working with the NGO Friends International on promoting child-safe tourism. So the 7 child-safe friendly tips that they give out to the travelers, and that's what we are engaging, not just directly with companies, but also through these. And the other example that I shared earlier was also through the CSR training institutes also, because a lot of companies approach these institutes for guidance on their own sustainability initiatives or CSR initiatives. So we need to also raise awareness and engage with these bodies.
Just a question right here. You spoke about the Mahong Portable Library. Can you just elaborate on that as to who funded it and what are the prospects for it in the future? Are you planning on expanding that?
This is funded by, we receive funding from TOPS. So they contributed to that funding element. But then in terms of the design element, the linkage with the Ministry of Education, making it happen and things like that, and the whole process, that was the joint effort. But the funding we did receive funding from TOPS. There was also funding, a pool that went in from UNICEF as well.
And are you expanding that?
At the moment, it's there for 2 years, and the plan of expansion, because we have engaged the Ministry of Education, so definitely there is this expectation that they would take this forward. But this is like a pilot to show them that this, we could do this and see the results and the feedback we receive from the families and the children in the community.
You mentioned a lot about like farms and agriculture and fishing and whatnot, but there are a lot of other companies in Thailand as well. So when we talk about awareness, to encourage service companies, for example, so financial banks or insurance or whatnot, to focus more on how parents can be more available for their children that they don't work over hours, or they don't work on weekends, or that they get time off for school events or whatnot. You mentioned you have a training kit, or you have some initiatives where you get corporate certified in child
It's not certification. This is the Child Safe Network.
Yes,
this is managed by the NGO called Friends International. And what they do is that they go out and conduct these trainings. And you could be a Child Safe member, and you're aware of certain issues relating to children. So they have their members from the tuk-tuk drivers, the taxi drivers, the vendors on the streets that see something that they can inform them, or security guards, or even individuals like the tour operators. And so there are, I think, around, at the moment, there are a few companies, especially the tour companies, that have collaborated with them, and the tour operators have gone through these trainings.
Okay, but so in the moment it's only for the high-risk businesses?
Yes, at the moment it's for them. But what you mentioned about the issue of parenting, I mean, that's something that definitely companies can really contribute to, because they have a huge workforce under them. And
do you have anything for this kind of
at the moment, no, not that I'm aware of. I can find out for you. Okay, I can find out for you.
Any more questions? Okay, then we'll wrap it up today. On behalf of all participants and our center, we would like to thank Nazia